So welcome back to Human Geography with Justin Fowler. I'm going to be talking with you guys. I'm going to be talking with you guys about culture in this unit, okay? Now, the culture unit is extremely long. We're going to talk about language, we're going to talk about cultural traits, we're going to talk about ethnicity and identity, we're going to talk about religion. So there's a lot that goes on here that we've already discussed some in population that we're going to discuss even more in political geography. So hold on your horses. We're going to go and we're going to take it on one cultural step at a time. Let's get going. So first things first, we need to talk about what culture actually is.
What is culture?
Most of the time, we think about culture as a way of life of a group of people. But you know what? That's actually an extremely incomplete definition of what culture actually is. Culture is more than just a way of life, but it encompasses multiple things known as character traits or customs. According to the people at livescience.com, culture is the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people defined from everything from language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. Which, if you're looking at culture as a way of life of a group of people, you might miss out on understanding exactly what culture is. As you can see, there's a lot more that really goes into it. If you take, for example, the Muslim hijab, the covering that the women are going to wear over their heads, that is very distinguishably Muslim, that right there is an example of a cultural trait. Or, once again, for another religious cultural example, look at the Sikhs and their use of the turban that they wear around their head. This is a cultural trait. Any one single thing that a group is going to do that's going to distinguish themselves as that group is going to be an example of a cultural trait. A cultural complex, on the other hand, is going to be more than just a single cultural trait or a single one characteristic that is going to help distinguish your group, but rather a series of different cultural traits that are going to be very, very closely related. They may be religious. They may be based on your ethnicity or based on your identity, right? But they're going to be a series of different cultural traits that are going to combine to make up the cultural complex. Next, there's a cultural hearth. Now, many of you, if you watch my instruction videos for the basic geography section, as well as just pay attention to class, you probably already heard the term hearth in reference to culture as a point of origin of something. If you're studying diffusion, the hearth is going to be the point from where the idea is going to diffuse, right? So you might think about hearth as a point of origin for a cultural idea or a cultural trait. Lastly, we have the notion of cultural region, which you're going to see this map. I'm going to display it many times throughout the course of human geography. And what people have done is they looked at different areas on the map, basic areas, and have kind of come up with similar cultural characteristics and called them cultural realms. Okay, so you've got your Anglo-America, which, for the most part, we have kind of the British or European legacy. You've got your Middle East, which also includes your North African as the Islamic cultural realm, because most people there are Arabic and Islamic, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the ways that geographers have characterized these cultural regions based on a set of overarching customs or ideals. So aside from just the idea of cultural traits or, food or religion or language that characterize and sets cultures apart from one another, you've also got the idea of how people are perceived from a cultural standpoint. So we kind of already have preconceived ideas of who people are based in their culture, and this goes largely into our study of ethnicity and identity. But just know that people are going to think what they will about different cultural groups, and that's part of what makes us different, for better or for worse. In order to more adequately tie in our discussion of culture with what we kind of already talked about with some of the tools of geographers are going to use equipment like GIS and maps in general to kind of help us to understand the distribution and layout of different religions across the earth. Not just religions, but any kind of cultural idea. People who speak Indo-European languages, people who are Arabic descent or Muslim in terms of their religious identity. So you can use any series of maps to demonstrate this. Cartograms, choropleth maps, dot maps, or dot density maps, any of these things that we've talked about as general thematic maps we can be using to help us to understand spatially the layout and distribution of different cultures. It's also really super important to understand the role in entertainment and the role in internet and mass communication in the spread or proliferation of culture in general. Now, for example, the English language is the world lingua franca. A lingua franca being a language of communication. Most of the time, if you don't speak English as a first language, you at least will speak it somewhat as a second language. And so many elements of human communication is done using the English language because of that. And so you can't ignore the role of the internet in the spread of English. You can't ignore the role of the internet in the spread of Christianity or in the spread of American pop culture. So we've already kind of looked back at cultural globalization in one of our earlier videos. This is kind of helping that to take place, talking about internet and entertainment and any of these things we look at, movies, magazines, sports, you name it. And it's not just American culture, but with the West in general. So I want to kind of take a little bit of time to tell you the difference between popular culture and folk culture, right? Because in the Rubenstein book, as well as some of the other human geography books, you're going to see that there is a distinction between the two. And so why exactly are these things? Well, first of all, we spend a lot of time looking at how urbanization is a part of education, is a part of literacy, is a part of better opportunities, better career choices. And so in countries that are more urbanized, people come together in those urban settings. And when people come together, there is exchange for ideas all the time, no matter how you see it. Also, where there is a better quality of life, culture is going to be diffused through things we just discussed, like internet and social media. And so what this does, inevitably, is it causes people to have access to very popular ideas that are also typically money-making ideas. And so people that are masterminds behind what entertains you are not just trying to entertain you. It's not all about you, my friend. What it actually is people are trying to make a lot of money by appealing to the masses. And typically you hear the word mainstream to kind of explain what it is that I'm talking about here. So popular culture is always going to be mainstream. It's always going to be pitched at a very large audience. And as time has gone on, that audience has become quite international. Folk culture is actually kind of the opposite, okay? So there's a lot of opposites, in human jargon. What folk culture actually is typically something that emerged in a rural setting, something that is almost like indigenous, for example. Not necessarily, but a small cultural group may practice folk culture, may sing songs about what they do, for example. Like if you're a farming group, you might sing songs related to farming. If you're a very religious group, you might sing songs related to your religion. An example of that may be the Amish, which are both a rural farming group and very culturally unique, distinguished by their very devout Protestant faith, Protestant version of Christianity. Folk culture can also include a set of cultural traits that is very unique to them as well, regarding the way that they farm, the way that they eat, the way that they worship in their religion. So there's a lot that could go into making up the characteristics of folk culture. It's also important to realize that folk culture has become popular culture over time, many times through. A good example of this laid out in the Rubenstein book is going to be the game of soccer, which initially started as, people kick around this dude's head. Eventually the game became just a chaotic scene where you have individuals kicking a ball from basically town to town, and whoever gets into each other's town is going to be the winner. Today, soccer is the biggest sport on the face of the planet by a long shot. Now, we in America might not realize that because we have football, and it's football season right now, and who cares about soccer? But soccer is kind of the biggest deal from an international stage by a long shot. Now, with that said, it's also important to realize that cultures do change over time, like with many other things. And soccer may not be at the top of the list of awesome sports for our whole entire life or for the future of humanity. For example, you have football, which is kind of becoming a thing right now in Europe, in particular the UK, where several times a year, our National Football League will send players or teams to play football in soccer stadiums in London. Now, how cool is that? What's going to happen there if you see American football take hold really strong and hard in Europe? So I hope you guys learned a little bit about culture from an introductory level. There's a lot to be learned in human geography regarding culture, from religion to language to stuff we just now talked about, some of the basic outlying stuff having to do with human geography. If you liked the video, share it with some of your friends. Let them know what's going on. Hope to see you soon.